What's going on, world? What's going on, gamers? Japan? So here, somebody just linked it to me. A couple of people saying I need to do this. Apparently, Endymion has inside intel about Assassin's Creed Shadows and Ghost of Yotei, about Jin being erased and Yusuke woke backlash. So let's go ahead and get into this. Like, subscribe, y'all. I'll be bringing you great stuff every day for years to come. Great gaming content around the corner. Dragon Ball, it's gonna be huge. I can't wait. Looking forward to that and lots of other great games. Nintendo Switch 2, you know I'm gonna be all over that. I know Japan loves Nintendo, just like me too. My favorite console and my favorite company of all time. Been gaming since 1994. So yeah, been in the industry a long time. Yeah, I look young, you know, Sony traits, take care of myself. But let's see what he has to say. Let's go ahead and dive into this. All right, y'all.
Hey everyone, it's Endymion, and since my last video about Assassin's Creed Shadows, I've been given some more information on the original game's plot, as well as some other things. I also got
Okay.
some news I heard from sources about the whole Ghost of Tsushima and Yotei situation as well, and I think a lot more people need to know about this too. Firstly, let me start with what I was told recently. I was contacted by someone who worked on the original version of Assassin's Creed Shadows, and they laid out to me what the story was before it was eventually scrapped by Ubisoft for the Yasuke story. Originally, the plot of Shadows was supposed to surround a piece of Eden like other games called the Sword of Eden. It was an Isu artifact like the apple or the staff in Odyssey, but this sword would corrupt its wielders with power and then give them dominion over others. The hero of the original story was named Taka Yamauchi, who was a Shinto monk. Taka was decided to be a follower of Shintoism because it was a unique religion within Japan at the time, which would give Taka an interesting viewpoint of the world around him. This was
That seems very, very, very believable. If we want to talk about being historically accurate and being unique to the land of the rising sun, because I've known about them erasing the main protagonist for a while. Even before this stuff came up, if you go back to my earlier videos, there's inside intel about Ubisoft developers. They got fired and removed that said that and did not want to do that, so they got rid of them. So there has to be some type of source that is actually telling the truth, but we know that it happened somewhere along the line. And it's interesting what he just said. Huh.
chosen because the writers on Shadows wanted to give the audience a glimpse into a world that was foreign to many. And it was juxtaposed against the idea that this Shinto monk wanted nothing to do with conflict or the wars that were being engulfed by nobles. So pretty much, the hero was a badass nice guy who wanted to garden all day and just meditate. But of course, like any good badass would, the danger finds them eventually. Apparently the story would have switched into high gear when Oda Nobunaga was killed. In case you don't know, in real life events, Oda Nobunaga was a famous lord that was murdered by his own trusted general named Akechi Mitsuhide. In the
Yeah.
new version of Shadows, Yasuke was a slave that is bought by Oda from the Jesuits when they come to Japan. And the very little details of the real life aspects of Yasuke that we do know, at least we do know that he did carry Oda's tools around and he would dance like a fool in front of his guests because Yasuke's skin was black and he was a very large man. Was Oda Nobunaga racist towards Yasuke in this sense? Absolutely. But I mean, it was a different time, of course, where a black man would stand out like a sore thumb amidst the rest of the Japanese populace.
That's a different take on things compared to the intel that I got. But we do know he participated in sumo wrestling and he came from East Africa and was brought over by the Portuguese of Rome who were running around trying to convert people into Christianity, but they were doing it by being a Catholic, which was kind of fishy. And Japan had rejected that at first. So he was a slave to them. I wouldn't say that Japan was enslaving anyone, but somebody like Nobunaga, would he had say, I would buy him from you so that he can give him a better life for entertainment? I would say that that would be the case. It just depends on how you say it, because I know Japan can be offended if you say things the wrong way. So that is a touchy subject to touch upon, obviously. But he gave him a much better life than he had elsewhere and what they were doing. Because obviously he's not going to just say, hey, you know, Jesuits of Rome, let me just snatch them for you and come with me. There had to be some sort of like exchange going on, obviously. So I would say that he gave him a better life than what he had before. But obviously he wasn't really free because, That's just how things were going.
Anyway, like I was saying, Taka Yamauchi, our hero, would be in a nearby temple when the fall of Oda Nobunaga happens. A fugitive would then come to Taka's temple from that said battle and would reveal himself to be Hattori Hanzo, who, if you don't know, he was one of the legendary ninjas of that same time period in real life. He was an actual person that was instrumental to the legend that we know today of Japanese shinobi. Hattori Hanzo would be wounded upon meeting Taka and would reveal that he had but one possession in his care, which would be revealed as the Sword of Eden taken from the hands of Oda Nobunaga after his death by Akechi Mitsuhide and his band of murderous power-hungry samurai brethren. Akechi Mitsuhide would announce that Hattori Hanzo was a traitor for stealing the sword, pinning the whole murder of Oda Nobunaga on him and using the confusion of the chaos of his lord's death to make it seem like Akechi was not the one who landed the killing blow.
Man, that's annoying if that's true. My God, that would have been so amazing. So this garbage stuff right here. Wow.
So, the entirety of Japan was out looking for this shinobi man who, unbeknownst to Taka, was carrying the Sword of Eden that could change the fate of Japan depending on who wielded it. I like the idea of the story so far. Sure, the sword is fantastical, but all Assassin's Creed had this concept, so it fits right in.
Yeah.
And it uses the real-life individuals of that time to make a compelling narrative that I would actually want to explore, but there's more, so let's keep going. Taka would agree to treat Hanzo's wounds and would shelter his presence from Akechi and his samurai. Within this newfound trust, Hanzo would reveal to Taka that he belonged to a mysterious clan unbeknownst to the outside world of Iga shinobis that were working to save Japan from the clutches of Akechi Mitsuhide and his corrupt samurai. These Iga shinobis would be revealed as the Japanese branch of the Hidden Ones. And this is how Taka would get introduced to the creed of the assassins. Akechi Mitsuhide and his men would also visit Taka's temple looking for information on whether he saw a wounded man carrying an item on him. But Taka would skillfully dissuade Akechi and his men and then throw them off of Hanzo's trail. I don't know if Hanzo would die or not in this story, but apparently one of the big branching narratives was going to be Taka going against Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who in real life was a peasant-born man who would eventually rise to become the regent of Japan and was considered the second great unifier of the country. He was also considered one of the most influential and powerful men in Japanese history, and was directly tied to Oda Nobunaga during his reign before Akechi Mitsuhide murdered him in revenge. At some point in the story, as I was told, this Toyotomi Hideyoshi would come into possession of the Sword of Eden himself, and he would then use it to sway the people of Japan to his side, and Taka, now a part of the Iga Shinobi's Hidden Ones, would be waging a secret war against Toyotomi and Akechi in order to secure the sword and ensure Japan was freed of this Templar samurai rule.
That actually sounds like that would be an Assassin's Creed story if you think about the historical track records of all the other Assassin's games. Because I beat them all, besides like Odyssey and Rogue, but all the other ones, yeah, I've cleared them. And I recently went through the trilogy again. Yeah, that's very interesting, and that's the story I would have liked. That's awesome. Damn, man, that annoys me.
Apparently, Toyotomi would refer to himself as the Demon King of the Six Heavens and was clearly becoming corrupted by the Isu technology within the Sword of Eden that was warping his mind, and would likely turn him into an untrustworthy madman who would think that everyone was out to get him. According to my sources, the story would eventually end with Taka defeating Akechi Mitsuhide for killing Oda Nobunaga, and eventually, within the shadows, taking down Toyotomi Hideyoshi and claiming the Sword of Eden for the Iga Shinobi Hidden Ones. The story would then end.
So y'all could kind of see that if you ever played Dynasty Warriors and Neo, definitely Dynasty Warrior games, you could see how that those lores do blend together, mixed with some of the Apple of Eden lore with Assassin's Creed. I could see that being very, very, very realistic. Like as far as that's what it was supposed to be. That makes sense to me after hearing all this intel.
End with Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was the first shogun of the Tokugawa shogunate, ushering in a new era for Japan that would span from 1603 all the way to 1868 when the Meiji Restoration would happen. Like Toyotomi,
Hmm.
Tokugawa was also considered one of the great unifiers of Japan. But from what I
Yes.
understand from this story, Tokugawa Ieyasu would not use the Sword of Eden to control the people of Japan. Instead, he would use charity and community to usher in a new era for Japan. The story would have ended with the Shinto monk named Taka Yamauchi fading into the shadows with the Hidden Ones to conceal the Sword of Eden so that it may never be used by another madman ever again. It was a classic story in terms of Assassin's Creed, I know, but I think it fits perfectly into what these games were about in my opinion.
Yeah.
According to my sources, which I asked if I was able to tell their experiences while working with Ubisoft, they said it was fine, so I'll tell you that now. They said they were very quickly flown out to Japan after being hired by Ubisoft for this very ambitious project. They also took many notes while researching the historical period, and they found navigating a foreign city to be very challenging to do at the time. On the weekends, they said that they were taken to various temples and shrines and were shown concepts like Shinto purification hand cleaning rituals and shrines that existed between modern day skyscrapers. They also told me they are still mad to this day that Ubisoft was willing to invest so much time and money into what they were calling a bad mobile game over their AAA Japanese Assassin's Creed game that they were also co-developing. I assume they meant the upcoming Assassin's Creed Jade game, which if you don't know is a Chinese-led Assassin's Creed game that is made in tandem with Tencent. Apparently, the
Oh
story that
boy.
was written by these original writers involving Taka Yamauchi, the Sword of Eden and all of that, was heavily scrutinized by the Shadows head development team. According to my sources, most of what was made or written by the original Shadows team was largely abandoned by the now Shadows devs. This all happened between 2015 to 2016 according to them, so this game has been on in and off development for almost a decade at this point. My source also told me they did hear
That's very interesting. Because the other sources were saying that Yusuke was erased in 2020. Oh, not erased, but Japanese protagonist was erased completely in 2020. And that's when I went full on board with him. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going around for sure.
that the bulk of the story and direction was changed during 2020, like I previously mentioned in my other video.
Yeah.
And they do believe that the political climate of that time, including George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, did lead to Yasuke being inserted over Taka Yamauchi.
Which is so
when my
funny.
previous sources told me that they saw a fully created Japanese male protagonist, I can only assume that what they saw was indeed Taka Yamauchi as he was intended to be shown in the game. According to one of my sources, the reason why Taka's story was rejected was because the narrative designers at Ubisoft didn't want Shadows to be a piece of Eden of the Week story again like other games. As of now though, I am not being told what the actual plot of Shadows is as of right now. But we do know that they gender swapped Taka and combined his idea of his character with that of another legendary Iga shinobi. But instead of Hattori Hanzo, the shinobi chosen was Fujibayashi Nagato. Nagato was like Hanzo, one of the legendary real-life Iga shinobi. But of course, he was not chosen as the main character of Shadows as I'm told because he was a Japanese man. And what's very weird in Western studios is, largely speaking, Asian men are oftentimes treated with the same disdain as white male characters as well. So instead of Nagato being your Shadow's main character or Taka, this is why Naoe is your shinobi in Shadows officially. She's the daughter of Fujibayashi Nagato, that's canon by the way. In the reveal trailer Dev Diary, they reveal and confirm that the name Fujibayashi Nagato is the guy in the trailer and that Naoe is his daughter. So Ubisoft quite literally took the concept of the Iga Shinobis, which was spearheaded and led by legendary male ninjas, and went screw all of that. They don't matter anymore. Instead, here's Naoe because women are better apparently. As I said in my previous video, Ubisoft wanted women to rule the gaming industry both within dev teams and
Oh boy, does that remind you of the recent hiring? Women only and non-binary? No men allowed? Absolute nonsense and witchcraft.
representation in media as well. I think a lot of this could have been avoided if they simply didn't have Yasuke, because two protagonists are not something we really want in Assassin's Creed games anyways, and
No.
they should have just made Naoe have a male variant, and then you can choose whichever you want, like in Valhalla. But what's done is done, I suppose, and now instead of a cool Sword of Eden story, you're gonna be getting whatever it is that Ubisoft has cooked up this time. But like I said in my previous video, they have at least 7% of the pre-orders of Valhalla in the same time period. It's a big
Yeah,
reason why they're bombing so hard right now.
I saw
Besides
that.
the origins of Shadows being revealed to me, another source told me that Ubisoft is reeling in terms of development as well. And they currently have, as my source told me, an abnormal amount of female developers in their studios, which is, yes, being done on purpose. What I was also told about Ubisoft, which was very stupid, is that in terms of the actual senior development leads working at Ubisoft natively, most of their actual talent is from contract work. And an alarming amount of these actual competent developers who usually work on these projects just to ensure they, make it through the door are actually middle-aged white men. These
That makes sense.
contractors, as I'm told, which have spoken to many of my sources about their experiences not only at Ubisoft but other dev studios, is that there's a devastating lack of competence and actual talent at a lot of these Western studios these days. And essentially what is happening is these publishers will hire these senior devs that actually know what they're doing as contractors, so they don't have to display them amongst the other far less competent devs, which are mostly, as I'm being told, and don't shoot the messenger, alright? I'm just telling you what they're telling me. But these incompetent devs are mostly women and people who are diversity hires. So case in point, competent white male devs are contracted to work on these things, not necessarily in roles that allow them to, say, change the story or approve character designs or anything like that. Those decisions are almost exclusively decided by your typical woke Marxist left-leaning activists within these studios. But since
Yeah, that's what's been going on. 100%, bro. Then you got like the non-binary people too, and the pride stuff and all that other nonsense. Absolutely.
when it comes to actually making the moronic ideas a reality being harder than they expected, they then contract these older white guys who likely make way more money off these publishers this way to make their stupid woke decisions an actual reality. So you end up with games that suck and are made for no one, but at least they still function as video games. But this is largely only because these contractors are working on it. It's kind of messed up when I spoke to my sources about this, but this is apparently happening all over the industry right now. Studios are filled with people who have zero idea what they're actually doing. They're being hired based on identity or gender, yet when it comes to actually making things happen, well, it doesn't, according to my sources. In terms of what I heard about Ghost of Tsushima and Yotei, it's actually far more bleak than I could imagine. Like Ubisoft and others, Sucker Punch also makes games in a way that my sources told me are called made by committee. Basically, these games are decided, then when the actual ideas come to what gets made and put into the game, it's almost like you have the heads of each department, if you will, at a round table, but not really, of course. They could be doing it all over Zoom or something, but same idea. Anyway, they'll propose an idea like they'll say we want a male main character or a female one, and then the committee of devs will then say yes or no, and then they vote on what gets made. And this process is used for many different aspects of every single game being made right now. Like, we want more diversity, please vote yes or no. We want the story to push anti-white supremacy, say yes or no, etc. This way of making games, as I'm told,
Inferiority, complexity.
it leads to why a lot of activism nonsense makes its way into games these days. Because a bunch of activists could and likely will sit on their committee board and just through voting will overwhelm the minority of votes to ensure that everything meets their demands. So when it comes to Naoe and Yasuke,
And my thing about how stupid that is too, if they're producing the best quality and you're having the best experience, why would you want to mess that up because you can't handle it and you want to come in there and make it worse? You're just a retard to me.
being a thing in Shadows, you can almost definitely believe that it was likely voted on and decided by a committee as well. The same thing is happening at Sucker Punch right now. I was also told, and take this with a big fat grain of skepticism again, but apparently most of the competent devs have indeed left Sucker Punch quietly already. I cannot confirm this, but from what I'm being told, the key talent behind Tsushima have left amidst the second game in the series being made. I was told that
I
originally
hope not.
Yotei was not the original game idea at all. It was actually indeed Ghost of Tsushima 2 starring Jin Sakai. But sometime during development, a lot like Shadows, the game was halted and then completely changed in vision. This Atsu character we see was not originally decided to be the main character of this game. And apparently, according to my sources, Yotei's world and design are largely based on the assets that were being used while making Tsushima 2. Apparently, work began on Tsushima 2 around 2 months after the official sales data came through on the first game's success. A skeleton crew was left behind to work on the Legends multiplayer, and the same team made the Iki Island DLC expansion as well. From what I'm told in terms of Yotei, the team that made the Iki Island DLC are the primary devs on this game, and the actual Sucker Punch that's left is allegedly mostly working on something else. Take this with your grains of salt or whatever people say, but yeah, Yotei was not the original vision, and key talent has left Sucker Punch, just like it happened with Rocksteady when Suicide Squad was being made as well.
That's interesting because I still see the same quality in the development. The problem is the female character and the voice actor. The way that it was kind of, maybe, yeah, that's why we need to see more. Yeah, like you said, grain of salt. I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt, but I'm a little bit iffy on it, of course.
I was also told do not expect Yotei in 2025 at all. Apparently the game's nowhere near being done, but it's a very slim chance at best that this game actually releases in 2025.
It'll be
It
late.
could very easily fall into 2026, but if you're getting your hopes up for it coming out next year, probably don't do that. Every source that I spoke to say that they fully expect a delay at some point to be announced. Originally, apparently they wanted this Tsushima sequel to drop close to John Wick's director's vision of the movie to capitalize on sales. But these changes from Tsushima 2 to Yotei happened apparently within the last year, so the entire vision of the project has been changed. The era of placing the game 300 years into the future from Tsushima 1's story was decided because it would be more believable in Sucker Punch's internal talks for the game to star a woman at that point instead.
Okay.
Especially considering Atsu would then have access to things like firearms to fight back against enemies as well. As I was also told further, Ghost of Tsushima 2 was described as Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, but way better in every single way. The game was supposed to move Jin Sakai further into the Japanese mainland to fight the Mongols. As I was told, Tsushima 2 was meant to be about Jin creating his own Brotherhood of Ghosts, a lot like Ezio does with the Brotherhood of Assassins as well in that game too. The idea was that Jin knew he couldn't face the Mongols alone, and therefore would train eager and talented young Japanese into capable warriors that could help him strike in multiple areas at once, which would then give credence to the idea that the ghost, as in Jin, and the legend were indeed everywhere at once around Japan, which would obviously scare the Mongols and then make the urban legend even more terrifying to them. There was meant to be huge cinematic battles where Jin and his ghosts would ride and face off against the Mongols as well. Yotei is also allegedly being developed as a cross-gen game for PS5 and PS4 because Sucker Punch and Sony are worried that the game won't sell as well if it isn't available to a larger install base. So for you out there who saw the Yotei trailer and went, this looks exactly the same graphically as Tsushima, which wasn't an ugly game, mind you, it's beautiful even to this day, well, now you have your answer. Although, as I'm told, Yotei may be smaller than the original Tsushima because of the development problems behind the scene, and the fact that they sidelined Jin Sakai for this new Atsu hero instead. This led to a lot of asset flips and the story changing, but the core idea of Jin being hunted by Ronin was kept, but of course, he was replaced by Atsu instead. I was also told by another source that the ending of Yotei will piss people off, however, they couldn't reveal more of that yet. I wasn't given specifics on what this could mean, however, I don't know how Yotei's ending could piss people off.
That's interesting. We'll see how reliable this is when we find out if it's PS5 only. That's going to say a lot about this insider intel.
The only conclusion I could make in my own head about this was that Yotei's story will feature moments where you do play as Jin, although in flashbacks. And I would wager if they mean the ending will piss people off, I would assume, and I could be wrong, but let me cook here, But imagine throughout the story you play some parts as Jin whenever his legend is being brought up by the people of Yotei. This way, Sucker Punch can reuse whatever missions they cancelled as content within the game to satiate the Tsushima fans. If I had to guess why the ending would piss anyone off, my shot in the dark here is that we learn that Jin Sakai is not successful in the battle against the Mongols, and that he likely dies during some pivotal moments during the invasion in order to either save someone or his clan by giving his life, and would likely end his legend within Yotei while still being able to play as Atsu, because you would learn that Jin Sakai ultimately failed, but his legacy would live on with his remaining ghosts that he fostered, and they would in turn eventually win the war and stave off the Mongol invasion. That's the only way I could imagine the ending pissing people off, but I assume that they will confirm that Jin died before he could actualize his efforts, which would then close the book on his story so that fans don't demand more content from him. And this then allows Atsu to live on, and then it answers that lingering question. But like I said, Asian men are now being viewed as disposable when it comes to representation by the West, the same way that white men are too, so none of this would really surprise me really. I was also told that people within Sony are leaking information about all sorts of games and developments to people on the outside, hence how I heard about this from my sources. Apparently, a lot of questions are being asked internally about things like Ghost of Yotei especially. Many are feeling blindsided by its announcement, and like I said, since allegedly Yotei was changed from Tsushima 2 to what it is now within the last year, a lot of the PR people and marketing developments were not made aware in time about Ghost 2 suddenly pivoting to a new main character with a sudden 300 year time jump or anything like that. So a lot of people are confused and scrambling for answers right now, wondering why they were left in the dark about this. Maybe because Sucker Punch knew if others were made aware, they would push against it, but like I was told, many of the key talent has either left Sucker Punch entirely, or they are not actively working on Yotei. As I was also told, if Yotei's reception does not improve, this could scale the game back in terms of scope and resources.
That would be wise if that's the case. I'm just annoyed, like, oh, so much mental disorders going on in the industry, it annoys me.
Sony starts to notice the public opinion on this game is not changing for the better, they'll opt for a smaller overall content package. So I wouldn't be surprised if Yotei releases at $60 Canadian or $50 American, instead of the usual premium price point of $70 American as it is right now, or $80-$90 for Canadians. Or maybe
Well, if they've done this with their games before, where they make like a expansion type single player game, they've done that with Infamous, done that with a few other games too, like Last of Us. So we'll have to see if it's not a full-fledged game, and then they do go with the full-fledged AAA version next. I don't know. The window has been long enough to make the next sequel, so usually they'll make it faster than that.
maybe they just don't care and they'll just release it at full price anyways, and they'll just hope that the
Probably.
name alone will still sell it regardless.
And
I
then
am
do a
told that
PC
Sony
version.
is developing future Ghost titles, but I wasn't given specifics on where they would be set.
They
So
said
if I
that.
guess you think of some setting that would be dope for one of these games, let me know in the comments. And I was also told that the voice actor for Atsu in Ghost of Yotei is a nightmare to work with, and even other woke people think that she's absolutely crazy. But again, this is what I'm being told. I don't want to
Gender fluid. Wants to be able to storm into the men's restroom and then the females.
accuse the voice actor too much because I can't verify this 100%, but yeah, from what I'm being told, they are an insane woke activist that makes other insane woke activists go, damn, that chick is one insane woke activist, man. They could be a very nice person, but that's not what I'm hearing. If I hear more, I'll let you know.
No.
None of this is sadly surprising since Cabrutus Rambo posted a bit back how Sony is looking to dive more into DEI nonsense in the future. And I mean, I did get attacked a lot for my comments on Ghost of Yotei as well as other games, but as time has gone on, it just seems that more people are turning to my side on these things. And look, it's okay if I get attacked, I'll keep speaking the truth because that matters more than anything else. Do I think
Right.
Sony will continue to push these concepts in the future? For the short term, yes.
Yeah.
But I think if people vote with their wallets, it'll be largely abandoned, hopefully. The reception to Ghost of Yotei, it has been nothing short of mixed. And the fact I reported before that Yasuke was inspired by Black Lives Matter is the cherry on top of the crap pie, and it's crazy that that got confirmed by not one, but multiple sources to me. You could have had Taka Yamauchi, dear viewer, saving Japan from the Sword of Eden, but these studios are apparently very incompetent, full of diversity
Yeah,
hires that
that's
are spending
annoying.
absurd amounts of money on contractors to actually make things work, which are largely white men in these roles. Am I saying white men are better at developing games? Not really, but it's weird that this is the narrative that I keep hearing from literally all of my sources. So we might be seeing a Suicide Squad Rocksteady situation with Sucker Punch and Yotei. As for Shadows, it's also apparently a buggy mess behind the scenes too. That's also what I was told, and none of this is really, news, I guess, but it is very disappointing. But I did hear that there's at least one franchise Ubisoft is not going to make woke in the future, and that is Ghost Recon. They apparently heard the fans when it comes to Breakpoint,
And Splinter Cell, they can't.
so that sequel will be a no-nonsense pro-military game in every conceivable way. As for everything else, however, fully expect this DEI nonsense to keep happening. If it changes, that depends on your support. So like always, whether these things happen or not, it's all up to you, dear viewer. That's what I got for now. Let me know what you think as always in the comments.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised by any of that, but this is good intel. Let me know what y'all think. Like and subscribe, comment. All right, y'all, glad to bring you this. I didn't say a whole lot this time because there was a lot to listen to and learn. I'm pretty sure y'all can understand why. All right, y'all. Have a great day, evening, night, wherever you're at. Peace.